you left a 15-year career as far as financial advising and then, left to do something different. How much of that was because you either didn't like the person that you were growing into or realized there was a box around who you could be to where you couldn't be the person that either these books or what life had said, oh, this is really what I want to be about?
Yeah, it's such a great question. If you think about it, and I look back on the timeline, about the time that I joined Maxwell was the time that I was trying to change the company that I worked for. And I worked for a Fortune 500 company. And I thought so big that I was constantly trying to change the entire company, not just the region I was in, not just the 20 people to 50 people we were responsible for working with. It was, how can we make this better for the entire entity? And that's the level of thought that I had. And so I would do leadership events, and I actually brought in a lot of Maxwell stuff. I did the John Maxwell stuff so I could bring it back and help everybody that I was working with, working for, and working to build up to be better. And what's interesting is the more you go on the personal growth journey, the more you realize you're in that box and you're surrounded by maybe an environment that's not perfect for our future. And my particular future, I was meant for something different. I was meant for something better. And it wasn't, my role that I was doing at the time was serving one client at a time. And I kind of came to the conclusion that, hey, what if I could help one entire business at a time? And then it became, if I'm helping hundreds of clients, now I'm helping thousands of clients, now I'm helping hundreds of thousands of people across the country. And this mentality was, how can I change the industry, not how can I change my own current environment? So starting my company was about serving the industry in a different way, taking what I had learned, being very grateful for the lessons I had learned, and moving forward. It's the same thing that happened when I joined Genius Network a couple years in 2018, 2 years after starting Freedom Street Partners. I joined Genius Network. The same thing happened to me. I started thinking even bigger. I started being surrounded by all these people that were exponentially further along in certain areas, and then others I was able to make an impactful difference in their life. And we were just connecting, and it made me think in a different capacity. And so I've continued to go on those journeys, and those personal growth journeys usually don't only help us with our personal journey, but they help us get out of the box that we're stuck in.
Say person's listening in and they're like, all right, I hear what you're saying, Scott. I feel stuck in this box, but man, I got 3 kids. I got a mortgage. I got, this or that. We're putting away towards, retirement, investment, all those things. Like, I don't know if I could take the leap to go do my own thing, or go over to this startup because, man, financial turmoil is where we're at. Like, you went through that. I went through that. Like, what do you share to someone with that mentality? It's like, I hear what you're saying, man, but I just don't know.
First thing that comes to my mind is, how can you not do it? So when you think about it, I want to be an example to my 2 sons. I want to be a leader in our family. I want to be a beacon in the community. And I can't be any of those things if I'm not true to myself. So if I'm just going through the motions and I'm living every day, but I'm not living at all, I'm actually hurting myself. I'm building a life of regret. That's the last thing. What I need to do is model taking chances, going on adventures, building something bigger, showing my boys that it's okay to fail. Even if I failed, it would have been fine. Now, it would have been petrifying. And if I'm that individual who's in financial turmoil, I remember the first 90 days that I left my very cushy, very well-paid 6-figure job. I remember being an absolute nightmare for like 90 days, just trying to figure it all out.
How old were your boys when you did that?
So I think, let's see.
I know it's hard math.
16. Yes. So they were like maybe 7 and 10.
Okay.
I know that we got a cat. Tyler, I know that we got a cat. So the only where my brain went is my wife calls me, and it's like the week that I'm starting over, and she's like, "We're in the Humane Society, and we're we found a cat and we're going to name him Pele. And
Oh,
I mean, they're hitting
okay.
everything. And the
Yeah.
boys are like posing with the cat. And we didn't have a dog. I'd said no to animals forever. And all of a sudden, I was at a weak spot. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a fraction of the dad and the husband that I want to be over the next 90 days. Just say yes, Scott. And I said yes. And so at the end of the day, that's what I remember about that moment is that they got me while I was down.
They knew that they could sucker you in,
They
that
got
your
me.
heart was just in pieces because you're like, I got these 3 people to provide for. And okay. All right.
They were under 10. To answer your question, they were under 10, and it was definitely a
Yeah.
unique time because they were
Yeah.
definitely young enough that how are we going to pay for college if I mess up? How are we
Yeah.
going to give them a better
Or
life?
activities like playing sports, like all
All
the
of
things.
it.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
My wife was 6 months pregnant when I left my corporate position to start my own business. And what I share in that, whether it's your experience, hey, they're little, you talk about those things, which at that point, my daughter wasn't even born. I didn't even, worry about college. It's like, how are we going to pay for, all the baby stuff, all those other things? But I also took the jump knowing that it would give me more freedom per se to do what I felt like I should be doing to serve my clients. And I think that's what if I look back and I hinge on and all the different things that I've gone through, it's like, man, and I learned this from our mentor, from John. It's like, you don't leave something, you go to something. Don't leave, go to. And I think from what I've read about you and what you've shared is as much of that change, what you just said, oh, I thought I could change the company, and realize, oh, no. I need to go to something where I can serve better. Would you say that kind of fit for you as well?
100%. It fit in each of the things. I mean, I can go back to my first career right out of college. I was working for the government, the state government. And I remember coming in and someone gave me the job and I finished the job in like 6 hours in one day. And I handed it to the middle manager and the middle manager said, that's a week to 2 week job. And I said, well, it's done in 6 hours and we're done with it. So what's next? Let's go. And I mean, I was 21 years old. I'm ready to change the world. I'm ready to earn a living, make a difference. And they were like,
"What? You can
go back."
change a button on a website in 71 minutes, not 100
Yeah,
days."
it's
I
crazy.
don't know. I don't know
Isn't
what you're
that
talking
crazy?
about.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, you can even give the government money back sometimes. It's amazing. If they want it, they could take it. So I am blown away at this. So I go back to my desk and I had to sit and listen to talk radio. At 21 years old, I'm listening to talk radio all day, sports radio. I was playing fantasy football, fantasy basketball, fantasy baseball. Like I was killing time. But I was actually in that time. This is prior to podcasts, folks.
Yeah.
So like I would have been, I was
Sports
listening.
radio, like that's
Yeah.
what I did. Like before you had like, Apple, like anything, I drove around. I didn't do books on, CD. Because I just didn't know about at that point, like what I need to do. It was listening to sports radio. Like that's what I did.
It was easy. So that's what I did. But to your point, I made these changes every time. And so when I got stuck, I went through the same mode. I mean, I'll be honest with you. The first thing that I do when I'm lost is I walk into a church and I sit down and I pray and I think. And it might take me a long time, but the one correlation to each of these decisions that I've ever made is I didn't make them alone. So the truth is, every single time when I was working at the Attorney General's office and I was in state government, and this was, I was losing my job because I was considered in an appointed role, and I was a baby. I wasn't really appointed, but I was like, it was a role that went with the new administration. So he didn't win. I didn't have a job. The quick version is I went to mass every single day at 12 noon, skipped my lunch, went into church and just sat and prayed and thought. And, eventually I found the career in finance. The day that I left that job, I went into the church at 7:00 that morning and I got on my knees and I was like, man, I got to find a way to make this work. And so to be honest with you, I think that's also that thinking, that praying, that time alone allowed me to also open my brain to know that it's not only me, I'm not alone. And that was always really helpful to me.
I think that's important because, as you share about those times when your boys were young, when I share about like my wife being pregnant, when I think about the next big change where, I walk away from a six-figure income knowing that the other business opportunity was bigger. And one thing that I think, you can really emphasize what you shared as far as like praying and thinking and journaling and meditating is how do you silence those internal woes or those people outside of you like, Scott, that'll never work. Like, what are you doing? That's stupid. You shouldn't do that. Like, what did you do, through those experiences, look back and say, oh, other than, again, was it more prayer, whatever, that helped silence all of those things?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the very first thing we started talking about. Who is your circle? If your circle is full of people telling you that you can't do something, you're in the wrong circle. If you are in a group of friends and everybody's telling you you're making the wrong decision, that you've made bad decisions, that it's not going to work, that I don't think it's a good idea, and that's all they ever say, that's not a friendship. It's not from a place of love. It might be if it's your mom and dad and they're trying to protect you from something. My mom and dad told me, "Why would you leave the government job? You have a government job that you're gonna have benefits. You're making more money than we are. Like what is wrong with you? Why would you give that up?" And I'm so grateful for that thought, and I'm grateful that my mom and dad made me think that way. But that wasn't the way I was made. So I had to kind of define who I was versus maybe who they thought I was meant to be. And they were just trying to provide this safety. So outside of your parents, who sometimes can also be naysayers instead of kind of believers, they're your biggest fan once you show them how to do it. I mean, but I go back to that question and I say, you're in the wrong circle. Find people that are willing to believe in you. And it changes your life.